Now, ever since the Hadean era of the Earth's history ended approximately 4,500 million years ago, I have remained in captivity, working on a 9-hour-long video. Why the Hadean era, you ask? Well, it is also known as the hellish landscape era of the Earth's history, which really makes sense as that's when I regularly upload it. Well, there's a line there somewhere. Now, I originally intended to unleash the behemoth of the video and just dip without any further elaboration, but then I unfortunately got wrapped up in college, and I don't really get much time to edit it. So, much to the dismay of the average video essayist with their 78 decade-long videos, I have decided to release it in parts, in a series titled Beyond the Mystery Box that delves into why my psychiatrist blames the zombies lore for my psychosis diagnosis. Now, I'll release videos in parts weekly to start, but may turn bi-weekly as I get closer to the end of the stuff that I've finalized. I think it's also much more digestible this way for people to sit down on the weekends and spend less than half an hour or so instead of 9 centuries watching some catatonic individuals tirade on why zombies is the cause for their psychiatric condition and not, in fact, just the confirmation of a pre-existing condition. Now, before I get to the start of this series, I just want to give a quick thank you to my channel members whom I have quite literally financially extorted. Like, why have y'all been paying real money over these years of literally zero content? On that note, I am unironically starting a Patreon because I've quite literally put my blood, sweat, tears, and ejaculatory fluids into the stupid-ass video, so support me with a Starbucks blonde espresso after my calculus classes if you so possess the disposable income needed to do so. Okay, I'm gonna stop the shameless plug. Now, reading the title of this video, every single one of you watching can tell that I really have lost it this time. I mean, after years and years of avoiding the COD Zombies lore like the literal plague, I am saddened. Saddened to say that my resolve has finally broken. For those of you unfamiliar with these recent developments, the context behind this channel and its viewers is basically people initially think that I'm clinically insane because there's just no other explanation for my half-hour videos about zombies that actually end up being in-depth discussions of occult mythology and particle physics for some reason. And I agree, like, people always make all sorts of allegations against me, and all I can do is concede and say facts, my brother. Spit your shit indeed, because honesty is the best policy. However, what usually happens over a long period of time is that people kind of start to get it. I mean, going from allegations of insanity to look, first of all, some of y'all need to chill out for real. Second of all, the point that I'm trying to make here is that scientists can make a legitimate case study of ongoing Stockholm Syndrome if they so pleased. Like, you have this one guy calling me underrated and all sorts of sweet stuff here, but you go back a couple of months and find the same guy asking, how the fuck are Van der Waals forces and particle theories relevant to COD Zombies? Are you on crack? Yeah, I am. Though I don't understand how that invalidates my scientific thesis on the matter. In fact, crack cocaine is the perfect segue into the beginning of this video, considering the COD Zombies lore. So, without further ado, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Wait, hold on, this is the wrong Bible, my bad. Now, whenever the lore of this little game mode is brought up, people are always so eager to explain it right from the very beginning, like the literal beginning. The problem I find with that is, all of that shit was introduced like a decade after the game mode was conceptualized, and I'm sure that the average person who only knows like the little story beats in zombies, like the zombie experimentation in Black Ops 1, would literally disintegrate into dust if they clicked on a zombies lore explanation video and immediately faced a one-to-one plagiarism of the Book of Genesis with, in the beginning there were the keepers, and the esteemed Sigma Omega Great One created the powerful summoning key. Like, bro would question their very reality for real. A better approach would be to take it in release order instead of taking it chronologically. You would be prey to a lot of retcons and unintentional red herrings like this, but at least you can experience the story as one would growing up with it. And of course, you will not need to question your reality afterward. Not until, Jason Blundell comes around anyway. Now, before I dip my nuts into the mess that is the Aether storyline of COD Zombies, sorry Chaos and Dark Aether fans, I would like to highlight that this is not just going to be a plot summary. I mean, like, nowadays in the YouTube sphere, you'd click on a quote-unquote analysis video of a piece of media you enjoy, and it just ends up being like a plot summary or some dumb shit. Like, even Pyro, whom I have wrote Cowgirl and gone Amazonian with, has fallen prey to this shit. Wait. He got them dogs out for free? Clearly this man lacks entrepreneurship. Like, you'd click on a 4-hour video of his about some game mode that just so happens to be trending. I'm sure that's not a coincidence. And it just ends up being an explanation of not only the game's plot, with a whole bunch of this happened, then that happened, but also his gameplay mechanics, because you gotta double the runtime somehow. And at that point, you gotta ask yourself one thing. If someone's gonna explain a game and how it works for 4 hours, why don't you just play the game yourself and finish it in half the time? Because Lord knows you're gonna watch that 10-hour video and forget about everything the very next day. This video is probably gonna be the same, and if any of this sounds familiar, I assure you, my fellow donkeys, I didn't call my 2 long videos analyses of anything, alright? One's a tier list video and the other's a piece of shit, if I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, the topic is what makes COD Zombies unique, but I just summarized everything about the game mode. I didn't even summarize it, actually. Like, I was rambling on and on for 2.5 hours to deliver a point that could have been made in 20 minutes with a half-decent script and a good grasp of the English language. You can skip to a random point in that video and find the most egregious shit like Black Ops 1. If you think you can't get PhD flopper without kissing my cock. Bro, wait, actually, how is this related to COD Zombies? And don't get me wrong, I am the biggest supporter of Mr. Dalek JD's trademark content format of making videos that surpass the age of the universe to say something that could otherwise be said in like 5 seconds. That is when he's not plagiarizing other content creators' video scripts word for word. Of course, shout out internet historian. At the end of the day, if Mr. Dalek JD has 1 million fans, I'm one of them. If Mr. Dalek JD has 5 fans, I'm one of them. If Mr. Dalek JD has 1 fan, that 1 fan is me. If Mr. Dalek JD has no fans, I'm no longer alive. To finish my previous point, I am not trying to dog on Pyro by any means. I am not even in the position to, especially considering how his content is objectively infinitely better than mine. It's also funny because he is one of my biggest inspirations, inspiring me years ago to try my hand at long-form content, and I honestly feel that sometimes even my writing style and the way I narrate things can be a bit Pyro-esque at times. He's had a huge influence on me. I just feel that now his content fits into a certain pattern of trends on YouTube more than ever. Patterns that I, as a consumer, am just not a huge fan of. And I feel like this doesn't need to be said, but the value of content is completely subjective. If you enjoy that type of content, regardless of who's behind it, that's great. For this video though, the topic is literally explaining the lore, right? I mean, that's certainly gonna be my get out of jail free card for real, but I actually took on a more personal approach with a whole bunch of personal interpretations that not everyone is going to agree with. Like, I could have read the JPEG of the zombies timeline in detail for an hour, or this holy grail of a Word document pertaining to that timeline in even greater detail for 2 hours, but instead, I chose to spend like 8 hours shoehorning in a whole bunch of unrelated bullshit that I loosely connect to zombies while acting like I have, trigger warning, a degree in philosophy. Woo! In other words, if the terminology isn't completely outdated by 2086 when this video comes out, I basically cook something that isn't crystal meth for once, but might as well be. And side note, literally 87% of this video is going to be full of dead memes, fair warning, and I am not sorry. Just cope. Cringe is good every once in a while. Gotta keep the immune system primed and healthy, nah me.
Level 5 got Riz, Livy done rizzing up baby Gronk, Ice Spice what the dog doing, Skibbity Toilet in real life only in Ohio.
Quick shout out to my channel members whom I'm quite literally extorting on an active basis. Like, I have no idea why they send real money my way, but they have unironically sustained the making of this video, regardless of how long it took, and I just want to express my gratefulness and just take a bow. I'll do anything for whomever gives me money, like send me a $5 and I'll start stripping too, bro. And right before the video actually starts, I would like to prove to you why it's not always bad to cook shit that might as well be crystal meth every once in a while. There are 500 videos on the zombies lore online and they're literally all the same, bro, and I was actually intending to make the 500 one a couple years ago. 500 one? First, and I instead dropped it for the 2-hour video, and I couldn't be more grateful that I did drop it, bro. Like, if the 2-hour video with at least a semi-decent and original, albeit badly executed overarching premise was bad, I don't even want to know what the alternative could have been, bro. Now, by all means, I am obviously not a very good content creator, and I especially wasn't back then, bro, but I would still like to show you that alternative. I still have the folder for the quote-unquote project here, aptly named fucking project, and right off the bat, you already know this shit is straight out of 2018 with that PewDiePie meme review, he protect, he attack horseshit, but then you click on the folder and discover something far worse. It's basically from 2020. So that's a great example of the lag that I have in receiving the latest memes and trends, and should tell you a lot about this video, honestly. I still have the Holy Grail Word document I spoke of earlier, with my prepubescent voice awkwardly reading it out word for word, and if any of that sounds like a word that starts with P and ends with plagiarism, that's just a coincidence, don't worry. And it all starts off with the professionally named beginning intro complet.mp4, of course.
Unlike the last 4 videos I did on the previous 4 maps, it won't just simply be my thoughts on the map.
Okay, so right off the bat, we got some IELTS Band 9 level English over here.
It'll be...
No, you got it.
This will be...
Come on.
This series will now be...
Jesus Christ, kid.
The entire COD Zombie storyline, but in a way that is understandable.
I'm sure that's not too ambitious at all.
In the beginning, there was only the Aether and the Keepers.
Wow, really?
The Keepers were celestial beings.
No.
They eventually created an artifact in the Aether known as the Summoning Key.
You're kidding!
It allowed them to create the universe and time itself. It then allowed them to travel between them.
Okay, shut the fuck up. So, ladies, gentlemen, and those beyond the binary, I think the 2-hour video wasn't that bad, honestly. Now, in 2008, the 5th entry in this now exhausted franchise released with World at War. As many are now aware, it isn't until after you beat the campaign of the game that you're met with a grisly surprise in Nacht der Untoten. This joke has been run into the ground at this point. Many people would be quick to jump at the mere mention of Nacht der Untoten, calling it a literary masterpiece and how it sowed the seeds for the interdimensional Lovecraftian ass shit that this game mode would later become. But listen, boy, I'ma slap your ass cheeks left and right and roll me some dough out of that shit like that, clown once did. Now, at this point in time, Nacht was just meant to be a one-off bonus game mode, the likes of the airplane mission in Modern Warfare, and this is coming from Jesse Snyder, the guy who came up with COD Zombies in the first place. You can read his blog detailing exactly how zombies came about here. I've linked it in the description if you're interested. Much to everyone's surprise, though, the game mode started to get a lot of traction, but even then, there was never consideration for any deep lore that would need an entire Bible to document. Not at first, anyway. In the shadowy confines of Nacht der Untoten, simplicity holds sway like an enigmatic charm. I didn't fully appreciate it back then. It is a map veiled in obscurity, where every bloodstain and cry for help on the walls merely hints at untold horrors. There are no cryptic lore details to pierce through this fog of unclarity. I took this emptiness for granted, as in the wake of what Zombies has become with interdimensional time travel, parallel storylines, and cosmic deities incapable of human comprehension, I realize now the undeniable beauty to these simple, vintage horrors. The only plot present in this map has to do with an apparent plane crash, with the 4 survivors waking up to the undead. Not much else can be said besides the idea that this abandoned bunker has been witness to other survivors as well. Judging from the various writings on the walls, one can hold high hopes for the other's survival, thinking they might still be out there, but let's face it and snap back to reality, like Eminem did in that one song. In trying to make sense of how this outbreak happened, you might as well grasp at straws, alright? I'm sure Mr. Waffle Waffles and Blundell's other hired thugs are opening up the Zombies Bible to preach its holy verses that shed light on the mystery that is Nacht der Untoten by saying shit like, the Apothecons breached the very fabric of reality and travel in worlds you cannot even imagine. You can't conceive of what they're capable of. Lightning bolts shoot from their fingertips. But the reality is comparatively rather fortunate, because all you need is verse Austin 3:16, which says, I just whipped your ass. The fact of the matter is, these guys literally just made a fun little side game mode, alright? There's no way they were even thinking of anything beyond a simple survival scenario. Now, this little piece of writing, this innocuous ass, oh look at me, aren't I so quirky ass writing on this wall right here, sowed the seeds for my now diagnosed chronic schizophrenia. I can still remember the feeling of being confronted with this mystery that really didn't have much merit to it when taken at face value, but you have to realize I had the context of the next few maps to go off of. In reality, this was probably nothing more than just a nod to one of the starting campaign missions of Treyarch's next title, Black Ops, but that did not stop me from having a goon session on the 2010 Call of Duty Zombies forums reading bizarre theories about what it could all mean. In hindsight, it could have also been something literal as you climb the stairs and literally ascend from the darkness, but don't you tell COD Zombies fans that. We love our symbology. It really connects with our, schizophrenia. Now, Nacht took its inspiration from a flash game called The Last Stand, which really served as a benefactor for all the fundamental mechanics the game mode would utilize. However, that still leaves a valid question of the entire premise and how the outbreak happened. One might go back and trace the very origin of the zombie as a concept in a bit to shed some light on this mystery, and upon finding out that the concept of zombies originates from the transatlantic slave trade in Haiti, where Haitian priests would propagate ideas of voodoo rituals that bring the dead back to life in order to dissuade any slaves hoping to escape their oppression by taking their own lives, one might very reasonably conclude that they might have gone back a bit too far. I don't know. The concept of zombies is one that has always popped up time and time again in literature, but never in quite the same form. Even Lovecraft himself has his take on zombies in his 1922 short story, Herbert West Reanimator, though he literally hated writing the story and only really did it for money, so go figure. If you're curious about the premise, it basically revolves around this mad doctor endlessly trying to reanimate a human being in secrecy. His superiors end up debarring him from doing any experiments after finding out about his nefarious, unfounded excursions where he'd go out and secure fresh cadavers on whom he'd test his elixirs of reanimation. Interestingly, the tests would go on to succeed, just not in a normal way. Ooh, I mean, who could have seen that coming? Am I right, fellas? Am I right, fellas? Now, this story genuinely comes across as some diet version of Frankenstein, and I would honestly not recommend anyone to go read it. Not only that, but the story also has Lovecraft's, quite racist and xenophobic outlooks exemplified much more strongly as compared to some of his other works, and that's kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to Lovecraft, because man has arguably some of the greatest takes on horror, right? But he was inspired by all the wrong things, basically, and you can kind of ignore it and take everything at face value in many of his other works, but there's literally no saving grace here, and it's just quite honestly a bad read, even for something that came out in 1922 when the standards for zombies weren't even set. The actual clues as to what's going on can be found in the map's namesake, Night of the Living Dead, a 1968 movie directed by George Romero that shares some striking parallels with Nacht. The movie revolves around these survivors holed up in this abandoned house, surviving against an outbreak of zombies, with the leader of the group taking initiatives to board every window and door lest the zombies find their way in. At a certain point in the movie, the question of how the outbreak happened gets brought up. The scientists reason that it may very well stem from a NASA space probe mission gone awry. In the movie, NASA had sent a space probe to Venus, right? And upon its return, they discovered that it contained copious amounts of a strange type of radiation. They destroyed the probe, but the outbreak begins not long thereafter, leading to the circumstantial idea that Venus may have been home to matter humanity was never meant to come in contact with. It's worth noting that this idea was never outright confirmed in the movie. Now, the concept of the modern zombies we know today was practically founded by this movie, and that is why George Romero is often accredited as the father of zombies, and why Nacht der Untoten's name serves as a tribute to his first zombie film. It can be reasonably postulated that something similar to what happened in the movie happened in this map's universe. However, as I've already established, it's not really supported much by anything due to the, well, complete lack of anything in the map. The next map, however, gives us a bit too much. So much so that it's mostly ineligible. Writings upon writings plastered over every wall. It's fitting for a map that takes place in an insane asylum. However, actually playing the map would leave you with doubts concerning the idea that this sanitarium only housed the insane. The map takes on a severe shift in tone compared to Nacht, with more of a focus on horror. When you're alone with just one zombie, you can take your time and explore the map, hearing all sorts of screams and cries from men, women, and even children. The map takes on much of a darker tone once you find out about what happened in its real-life counterpart in Berlin. The sanitarium in Berlin functioned about as normal as you would expect, right up until about 1933, when the Nazis started to gain a lot of power. Instead of treating diseases and disabilities, the sanitarium instead made use of forced sterilization and euthanasia as they saw fit. Nazi propaganda ran strong, and in an effort to create a racially pure society, anyone deemed a burden to society, whether as a result of the prevailing racial, ethnic, and discriminatory biases, or their having any disabilities or illnesses, would most probably be forcefully sterilized and even euthanized before being sent off to killing internment camps and trains. All of this regardless of their age. People from all sorts of different backgrounds, as arbitrary and simple as being Jewish, Slavic, or queer, to give a few examples, would not be exceptions to any of this, though they'd later be hunted down in more targeted ways. World at War is based on a World War II setting, and Zombies is no exception. The background of what happened in real life makes it all the more unnerving when you hear the pleas of men and the weeping of women, children, and even infants as you roam around the map. It's worth noting, however, that Treyarch didn't specifically pick out this exact sanitarium for the purposes of the in-game lore. Rather, they probably just based it on a random sanitarium in Berlin. Still, these practices and crimes against humanity were not unique to just one sanitarium in Nazi Germany at the time. Now, coming back to the writings on the wall, if one acquires some top-shelf Zaza and sits down to analyze what's written here, they might just find some credence given to the idea of outer space tomfoolery. Walking into this room, you'd find that literally none of this shit makes sense, right? But this one particular piece of writing here looks to be a date, I dare say. And it's at this point that you Google what happened on June 24, 1938. And upon first glance, there doesn't seem to be any. It's clear that there is something more sinister at play here. And it's not helped by the fact that the numbers beside the date, 9/21, seem to refer to a Bible verse, with the only relevant one being Jeremiah 9:21. For death is come into our windows and is entered into our palaces, to cut off the children from without and the young men from the streets. The symbology is pretty clear. The meteor exploded and gave way to a form of death itself. Just like when Oppenheimer created a weapon of mass destruction and was surprised when it actually caused mass destruction for some reason. I'm Strauss. Taking this further, one can analyze the other writings as well, but the only writings with any legible pattern seem to repeat themselves. The pattern, of course, being the Illuminati code, interestingly enough. There's not much else besides a reference to the living dead in OHM 935. Personally, I'm not sure what OHM could refer to. I only know the ohm to be a unit of electric resistance, but perhaps the symbol for that, the omega, is more relevant here. Omega often symbolizes the end, as it's the final letter of the Greek alphabet. Perhaps this 935 brought about the end, quite literally. I'm totally not foreshadowing anything, by the way, and if you think I really shoehorned that one in, rest assured that this is literally the average cost zombies theory for real. Any suspicion of a deeper concept at play would be quite warranted, as the next map, Shinonuma, all but confirms it. In every map up until this point, there were radios scattered here and there. The radios were never interactive, however, save for the one in Nacht that plays the music from the World at War campaign. Knife a radio and spawn here, though, and you'd be met with static. Seemingly arbitrary, till you knife two of the other radios nearby.
R-4808N 371406 115 48 40. I
hope you're receiving this transmission, Peter. If you are not, then all is already lost. You must know by now that we failed to contain the asylum, and that we had to move the experiment here. Location. The numbers will guide you. The giant must remain at all costs. Repeat, der Reese must remain safe at all costs. The DG2 experiments continue. Might be our only advantage now. Find Dr. Max's. They may know what's going on. The use of 115 is dangerous at best. I'm not sure we can continue here. We've lost most of our best people. I hope you get this. I hope it hasn't happened there too. But I'm almost out of hope.
6054 06.96 101 55 44.94.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to discover all of this real time back in 2009. This was the first instance of any lore being established and presented, and to be so in the dark about everything, only to be presented with vague mentions of some doctors and an element 115, leaves a lot to the imagination. The transmission has two sets of numbers, one at the beginning and one at the end. The first one is headed by a restricted airspace code for Area 51, a moniker for the highly classified US Air Force facility in Nevada. The numbers that follow are coordinates that unsurprisingly lead to the facility. The coordinates at the end of the transmission, however, are much more peculiar. They lead to a site in Siberia, which served as ground zero for one of the most bewildering and mysterious explosions that ever occurred on Earth, the Tunguska Event. I feel like such a stereotypical video essayist right now that I just feel like I have to pop out some old VHS footage as the intro for the video after loading like an audio cassette into a tape recorder or some shit, right before I discuss the fall of the Roman Empire or some other unrelated thing. No! At breakfast time, I was sitting by the house at the Vanavera trading post facing north. I suddenly noticed that directly to the north, over on Cool's Tunguska Road, the sky split in two and fire appeared high and wide over the forest. The split in the sky grew larger, and the entire northern side was covered with fire. At that moment, I became so hot that I couldn't bear it. It was as if my shirt was on fire. From the northern side, where the fire was, came strong heat. I wanted to tear off my shirt and throw it down, but then the sky shut closed and a strong thump sounded, and I was thrown a few meters. I lost my senses for a moment, but then my wife ran out and led me to the house. After such a noise came, as if rocks were falling or cannons were firing, the earth shook, and when I was on the ground, I pressed my head down, fearing rocks would smash it. When the sky opened up, hot wind raced between the houses, like from cannons, which left traces in the ground like pathways, and it damaged some crops. Later, we saw that many windows were shattered, and in the barn, a part of the iron lock snapped. This is a testimony acquired in 1930 from S.B. Semenov, one of many eyewitnesses to the event that occurred 22 years prior in 1908. Over the days that followed the event, witnesses in Asia and Europe reported the sky aglow with a light blue sheen. A few decades later, researchers eventually journeyed to the remote site in Krasnoyarsk Krai, expecting to find a large crater, only to find nothing but a leveled forest, sowing the seeds for the enigma this event would become for the 20th century and beyond. Despite still being classified as an impact event, modern-day understanding of this event is based around its being a meteor airburst, which is when a meteoroid explodes as it falls to the earth. The light blue glow of the sky that followed is thought to be a result of the ice particles shed from the meteoroid. This is practically a culmination of scientific investigation that hasn't really ever ended, even to this day. While the main explanation for the event is backed up by strong evidence, given the nature of the event's remote location and the fact that it occurred in 1908, there's just enough minor irregularities that lead to several other explanations, if not just attempts at explanations. How this can all tie back to zombies has to do with the idea present in Night of the Living Dead regarding outer space radiation, with the two references to meteorite sites and the element 115, which at the time wasn't officially recognized as an element. It can be safely assumed, using the movie as a basis, that outer space meteoroids carried this element and later crashed into the earth, somehow leading to the dead's reawakening. Element 115 was basically this thing that conspiracy theorist Robert Lazar focused on before the element was actually synthesized in 2003, and he basically claimed to have worked on reverse engineering extraterrestrial UFOs and flying saucers near Area 51, reporting some of the vehicles there being powered by element 115, which purportedly had properties of anti- or artificial gravity that allowed the vehicles to defy conventional physics and move at breakneck speeds. One might think that he was on to something, but just like literally every other conspiracy theorist out there, he's most likely just a crack addict. Like, element 115 wasn't synthesized at the time, but bro was probably smoking. And let me tell you, like, you go onto his Wikipedia page and discover how he basically lied about having degrees from MIT and Caltech, even though neither university has any record of his attendance. And then you scroll down and read up on his criminal history and like, yeah, bro. But coming back to zombies, there happens to be a third meteorite site not mentioned anywhere thus far. And it's a site that you can venture out to in the map. The meteorite is a glint with red lines that almost look like veins, producing strange sounds even from afar. Coming too close to it would only leave you in a daze. When a person is hit with a high dose of radiation, nothing really happens immediately. It's only after time passes that symptoms of radiation sickness start to show. Here, though, it's clear that the effects are immediate. Perhaps a type of matter this meteorite is laced with possesses a special kind of harmful energy, one quite unlike radiation. The map itself leans even more into the horror side of things. The radio transmission mentioned experiments being moved here from the asylum, and given the abundance of barrels filled here with who knows what, a lot is once again left up to the imagination. Just what kind of experiments are they dealing with? Who are Doctors Maxis and Richtofen? And what is Delisa? In an effort to find some clues as to answer some of these questions, you can go around knifing and interacting with various props located in the map, and yeah, that is quite baffling. More information is revealed in the next and final map of this game, which lays the core foundation for the entire storyline. Expect a premiere next weekend because this Dr. Richtofen, bro, let me tell you, he up to some shit, alright? Like, you gotta see this next week. Like, bro, like,